Hey, welcome everybody. I see that everybody's starting to get logged on here little by little. So for those of you that are already there, if you don't mind, give us another minute, minute and a half, just so that we can let everybody start to get logged in and set to go for our session. And we will be right with you shortly. So thank you so much.
As you're all getting logged in, I just want to remind you that this presentation is being recorded and will be available to watch on demand in the FAIR platform in approximately 24 hours. And we will be addressing questions from all of you towards the end of the presentation. So if you have a question, make sure to jot it down so that you'll be able to ask it in the Q&A box towards the end of the presentation. You are able to use that Q&A box at any time, but we won't start answering those questions until the end. We really are very happy that you're all here with us right now, and we will get started in just a minute. Okay, we'll go ahead and get this party started. We are going to be talking about a lot of great information today. Our session is entitled Money Management, Budgeting, and Scholarships Making a Difference in Medical School Indebtedness. My name is Julie Gilbert. I am an education debt management specialist with the Association of American Medical Colleges, and I'm also joined by my colleague, Jonathan Chancellor. Jonathan?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, my name is Jonathan Chancellor. I've been with the AAMC for about a year now, following Miss Julie Gilbert's lead on all things when it comes to education debt management specialties. So that is what we're going to be looking at today.
We are going to jump right in with a poll for all of you to take. And that poll is right here. When do you expect to start medical school? We wanted to know a little bit about you as we start through this presentation today. I do see we have some people that are asking some questions, and that will be great. Again, just as a reminder for those of you that logged on a little bit later, this presentation is being recorded and will be available in approximately 24 hours. And we will be addressing questions towards the end of today's presentation. So you're welcome to use that Q&A box if you do come up with any questions for us. The other thing I wanted to mention real briefly is because some of you may not have had an opportunity, we do have a video that I'm going to send out in the chat box as well. And that's a financing medical school video that you might want to take a look at. So right now we are seeing that we have a lot of different participants at a lot of different places. So some of you are going to start school in a year. Some of you are looking at 2 years or even 3 years away from medical school. My hat goes off to all of you who are here, because I think the more you start to learn about financing and learning about scholarships and budgeting for medical school, the better off you're going to be. So thank you so much for taking that poll. We will have a few more as we go through this presentation. So let's move right on to talk about what we're going to do here today. And first of all, I think we need to let you know about our program, and that is the FIRST program. FIRST stands for Financial Information, Resources, Services, and Tools. And as you'll see on this next slide, we have a very robust landing page for all of our resources that we have for you. What you're going to see here is, if you take a look at the top left, we have a brand new publication called A Student's Guide to Money Management and Student Loans. We encourage you to take a look at that, because it starts at when you're beginning medical school, takes you through your medical school years, and then into graduation. Later on, we'll have, probably towards January, we'll have a section for residency as well. So there's going to be more information added to this publication, and we encourage you to check it out. The next thing that we have available to all of you are our first fact sheets. These are informational articles about lots of different topics. They can be about money management, about credit, about budgeting, about loan repayment, about different things that can help you pay back your student loans. So loan repayment assistance programs. We also have information about scholarships out there too. So I would definitely go ahead and take a look at those. Next thing I wanted to draw your attention to was the videos and webinar section. We have a lot here. We hope that you will join us if you haven't already for some of our first webinars. They are usually once a month, and they're free to everybody who chooses to register. And then we do record those and we post them to our website. We also have a few videos, which is what I sent to you all in the chat a little bit earlier. And I'm going to put that there again in case we had any stragglers. So that's coming to you right now, and that is financing your medical education. The next thing that you'll see are our first resources. Now, these are lots of different things that could be publications, they could be infographics, they could be charts or worksheets that can help you. Anything that might be of service to you as you continue through your medical education program. We have pre-med tip cards, we have medical school tip cards, and we have resident tip cards as well. The last thing that you'll see there on the left-hand side is the MedLoans Organizer and Calculator. This is actually a tool that was created specifically for medical students and residents to take a look at realistic repayment options. It's the only tool that's out there actually that takes into consideration the fact that when you're in residency, your salary is going to be lower than what it will be after residency. And that has an impact on student loans if you do borrow loans to go to school. And if you read the description of today's presentation, you know that over 70% of students borrow student loans to go to medical school. So that calculator is going to be very, very beneficial for people. If you move over to the right-hand side of our page, we have a search first button. We also have a place where you can very easily sign up and register for the upcoming webinar, which, by the way, is tomorrow. We have a webinar about credit, and you can register right there at where it says register for the next first webinar. So we do encourage you to use these resources and get familiar with what's available to you, because it's going to be very helpful for you. The next thing I wanted to mention is that we also have what's called the financial wellness. Oh, excuse me, the newsletter. I forgot the newsletter. Newsletter is something that we send out bi-monthly, so you can learn about different things at appropriate times. So you can sign up to receive that, and that will come to your mailbox on a bi-monthly basis. So we'll go to the next thing. It's a program within a program, and that is the financial wellness program, which can be reached at the bottom right-hand side of our landing page. If you see on the next slide, what we have is a little bit more information about the financial wellness program. First, you do need to set up an account. It is free to create an account, and it is for absolutely anyone that wants some financial information. There is information in here about budgeting and credit and taxes and insurance and having a baby, buying a car, tons of things, anything that has to do and has an impact on finances. So we encourage you to use this. Use it when you need it. This can help you before you get to medical school even. There are some calculators. There's video modules in here, as well as different learning modules too. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. Now, we do have another poll for you, and that is coming up here. If I can launch this one. Let's see here. Maybe. Hold on one second. I'm not able to launch. So let's do it this way. How do you plan to finance your medical education? I am wondering if you can think about that to yourself. How are you going to plan to finance your medical education? Now, as we said in the description, we know that about 70% of students borrow student loans to go to medical school. But we also know that many students don't want to borrow student loans, right? So how else are you going to finance your education if you don't take out student loans? Well, we're going to talk to you about some of these things today. We are going to start out by first taking a look at medical education debt. So let's look at that. What we want to show you here is the fact that if we take a look at the class of 2023, we know some information about them. We know what the 4-year cost of attendance was for those students. And remember, cost of attendance is tuition, fees, room and board, or an allowance for that, transportation, miscellaneous fee expenses, and any type of equipment that might be required. So you have your breakdown here, and this would be for a 4-year school. Now, yes, you can see that on paper, public cost of attendance is about $100,000 less than private. But what I really want you to focus on is that if you are going to borrow student loans, the amount of debt that you take on, and this has pretty much stayed the same for the last 6 years, the median amount of debt for overall all students is $200,000. If you break it down and you look at public versus private borrowing, we also see that it's not that much different. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because I think it's important to know what it does actually officially cost on paper to attend these schools. But it does not mean that you're going to borrow up to that cost of attendance. Some of you may need to borrow the loans, and that's fine. Others of you might look at other ways to help finance that education. And that would include some of the scholarships that we're going to talk to you about today. So you may or may not be borrowing the amounts that you see on the screen, but also keep in mind that just because a school costs more on paper, it does not necessarily mean that you're going to borrow that money. So remember, apply to those schools that are going to be a good fit for you, where yours and their mission align together, and you're going to be able to reach your goals by attending that school. So just a little bit of food for thought there. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan, and he's going to talk a little bit about the different types of financial aid that might be available to you.
Thank you very much, Julie. Yeah, a lot of us, when we think about going to medical school, when we think about the overall cost, we think about what kind of financial aid, what kind of financial assistance can you actually get? So what we wanted to do today was go through some different options that are available to you, because as Julie said, a lot of people think about medical school and they relate that to debt. They think about the amount of debt that people are going to graduate with, but there are other options for you. So we want to give you all of the options we have at the AAMC that we can think of to share with you today. So one of the first things about financial aid that all of you should be thinking about, I noticed in the poll, most of you are about 2 years out from going into medical school, is just think about the application process, right? I can't think of too many schools, whether it's medical school or not, that are going to give you money if you don't apply. So it's really important to think about the application process. The very first thing you could do, look at your school's financial aid website. That's going to tell you pretty much everything you need to know about the application process. It's going to let you know, what do you need to fill out? Most of you are probably familiar with the FAFSA. That's sort of one that we're taught about that even in grade school, I think, at this point. But then there are other applications like the CSS profile, which is a little bit more in depth. So it might ask a lot more questions, take a little bit more time. Some schools might ask for both. Some might ask for one, but some might also have their own institutional application. You just want to make sure that when you look on that website, they'll tell you, your financial aid team will tell you, these are the applications you need in order to apply for financial aid at this individual school. And trust me when I tell you, they're all going to be a little bit different in some way. So make sure you pay attention to that. Also, communicate with the financial aid staff. From the minute you apply for even admission at these medical schools, you will have access to this financial aid team. So they're going to help walk you through that and make sure that you do get everything set up that you need to do in order to be fully applied for assistance. Most schools also have some sort of a student portal. If you get admitted, that's when you're going to want to make sure you set that up. That way, that portal will let you know, here's your financial aid package, or if you don't see a financial aid package, what is missing from your application so that you can fill that out and make sure that you get that in. Other big things to remember about the application process is that some applications require a yearly submission. The FAFSA does, the CSS does, just to change numbers. But you also need to make sure, again, does your school require you to do the CSS every year for any institutional aid? That may not be the case. You just want to make sure that you submit everything. Again, the student portal is really important. They might let you know if you need to turn in any kind of tax documents or anything for verification. Also, be aware that processes could change. Financial aid offices are always looking for ways to improve this process for students, to take the burden off of what you have to do every year. Plus, financial aid officers have to constantly be aware of what's changing with the FAFSA and the federal government. So there might be some changes every single year, hopefully not, but just make sure you know that. And also deadlines. Deadlines are super, super important. You don't want to miss the opportunity to apply for free monies or any kind of financial assistance just because you missed a deadline. Once you know what that deadline is, and it will be on the website, I assure you, highlight it on your calendar. Give yourself 2 weeks of processing time if necessary. Whatever it is you feel like you need, make sure you just put that on your calendar and say, listen, I know according to this school, I've got to do either the FAFSA and or CSS and or institutional application. It's got to be done by this date. Do not wait until 11 p.m. at night on that date. Get these things in as soon as possible. I promise you that's when it's going to be worth it for you. One type of aid that you could be offered, let's start with loans, right? So we want to talk about the loans that you could be offered through your financial aid team, through your school. So most of you, and I do say most of you, will be offered federal loans up front. And those are going to be direct loans that they're awarded by the school based on your FAFSA data, but you're going to be funded through the Department of Education. As a medical school student, you're eligible for 2 federal loans. You're eligible for a direct more than 2, my apologies, but the 2 top direct loans, direct unsubsidized loan and direct plus loan. The big thing to know about these loans is that these loans do accrue interest while you're in school. They're both unsubsidized, essentially, okay? You're eligible for a specific amount of unsubsidized loan per year, and then anything else you could supplement with the direct plus loan. So you want to be aware of that. Some of you might also be aware for a primary care loan, a PCL loan. You might also be eligible for loans for disadvantaged students. That's an LDS. Your school will make that determination based on you submitting all the necessary applications possible each year. That's why I kind of harped on that last slide. I want to make sure that you definitely submit everything. Other loans that you could be eligible to receive could be institutional loans. These loans are usually awarded through the school. The school is the one that knows what the terms of those loans are, whether it's a loan that accrues interest or not, or when the payment starts. So those could be another offer for you. Most of those do require some sort of application to look at your financial need. Or there could be private loans. Now, this would generally be if you're someone who's not eligible for the federal loans or the institutional loans, and you decide you want to go outside those programs and look for a private loan. If you do that process, that's one that would be based on your individual information. So that is you deciding, I'm going to apply for a loan on my own at an outside bank or institution, and you think that that might be your best bet. Perfectly fine if that's what you want to do. But these are the loans that most students go into when it comes to medical school: federal, institutional, or private. When you think about borrowing, you definitely want to make sure that you add on the word wisely to it. Borrowing is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You're investing in a very, very lucrative future, but you want to do it wisely. Typically speaking, you want to start out with institutional loans. The reason I say that is because a majority of institutional loans are subsidized, which means they do not accrue interest while you're in school. They also have a repayment term that sometimes gives you a little bit longer after you graduate, maybe 2 or 3 years, so that you can finish your residency before you begin that repayment. You could also look after that at the LDS or the PCL loans. Again, 5% interest. Look at whether or not they're accruing interest during medical school, but also know what those terms are, right? Because you will have to make sure that you do meet the criteria for those loans if you decide to take those out. Next, take the unsubsidized loan. That is a loan, again, that's through the Department of Education, but you'll see that the interest rates are a little bit higher, and it does accrue interest every single day at a 7.05%. Then you've got your direct plus loan, and this is for graduate or professional students, which would be you in medical school. Again, a higher interest loan, right? 8.05, so much higher than the LDS or the PCL, and higher than the unsub. Next, think about private loans. We put that up towards the top because those are going to vary. Those interest rates and the repayment terms are going to be based specifically on you as a borrower. They're going to look at your credit history, your credit score, and all of those different things. And then based on that, then that lending institution will determine what your interest rates are. Those rates will vary depending on when you apply and what they are. The benefit to the direct lending program is those interest rates, if you do take that loan out, it is fixed throughout the life of that loan. So that won't change on you. So that can be a benefit if you're thinking about what your options are. And lastly, credit cards. I don't know if there's a credit card out there that has an 8% or lower interest rate. So we put that up there at the top because it is borrowing, right? I mean, even though a lot of people don't think about credit cards as borrowing money, you're borrowing money against a card until you are able to pay that back because you didn't have the money at the time. So always think about what you can do, borrow wisely. And just to reiterate at the end of this, know the terms and the rates of all of these loans. They're all going to be different depending on, the federal loans are going to be the same, but you want to make sure whatever your financial aid award is and that package, see which loans are best for you. This is your finances and your financial future. So just make sure you're aware of what those are and make the decision that's best for you at that particular moment.
All right, we are going to try to launch this poll, and this is what scholarship programs help fund medical school?
I'm very curious about this one myself to see how the answers come out.
We are very happy that you're all participating, so thank you for that. A lot of people know about some scholarships, Jonathan, so I think we are going to be in good shape with this presentation.
We are.
So it looks like a lot of people are familiar with the fact that schools might have institutional scholarships, but maybe not as many people are aware of those outside resources. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. So why don't you go ahead and give them an idea of what grants and scholarships might be out there, and then we'll dive into a few more specifics about outside resources.
Happy to do it. So yeah, let's just talk about those right off the bat, right? So when you apply for financial aid, none of us really get excited to think, I wonder which loans I'm going to be offered. You want to see what kind of free money you might be eligible to receive. That's the goal, right? To see what you can get from the school or another institution. So grants and scholarships, what kinds of grants and scholarships are there? Well, there are institutional, which a lot of you, 63% or so said that you were aware of institutional. And that sort of, again, goes back to Jonathan harping on the slide about applying for financial aid, because it is important that you are aware of your school's institutional funds. There will be some that are based on financial need, which means they are going to ask you for the FAFSA and or CSS profile or another application. And then there will be some that are going to be merit-based. So some schools do have funding that they will give to you based on your admissions application. I always tell myself, why not apply for the other as well? But do be aware of what your school's offers are. There are also federal scholarships that you can apply for. There are state scholarships and sometimes grants at those different levels, and of course, other. So let's just see if we can look at some of those different options for you. If Jonathan can work his computer here. So when it comes to scholarships and grants, what's important to know about them is that you may be asked to submit some information, maybe to share with a donor. So if you're getting an institutional scholarship from the school, they might say, well, can you let us know a little bit about yourself? What do you plan to specialize in? Where do you plan to work? What do you plan to do? These donors sometimes want to know that information about the students that they're helping fund. So make sure if your school asks you for something like that, that you're able to submit that to them. You definitely don't want to miss out on $10, $20, $30, $40,000 if all you have to do is just tell somebody, look, this is what I want to specialize in. I want to be in pediatrics. I want to be in something. So just let them know that. Grants and scholarships can come from the government and or institutional funds. Some of this can vary by state, but it definitely can vary, especially by either your institution and also if they're able to offer any federal funds. So make sure you're aware of those. And scholarships and grants, they're generally free money. I've not really heard of any that aren't. So again, this is where we're trying to get. This is what we're trying to apply for. Being aware of deadlines. That's the second time we put that in here. We're doing it for a reason. Some schools want you to apply every year. They may say, we're going to give you this award. Here it is. This is wonderful, but you got to make sure you apply every year. Some schools may not. And that's fine, but you just want to be aware of what those criteria are for keeping that scholarship as you progress through medical school. And also check for school-specific scholarships. Again, some of these schools might have a general application process, but they might also ask you to apply for individual scholarships. It might be a little tedious to you, but at the same time, if you think about how much money you might be able to save, when Julie gets into the savings here in a little bit, looking at repayment plans and where we can chip away at loans, you're going to be glad you did. So just be aware of what your options are when it comes to these free monies in the application. Look at all these other scholarships that are out there, whether it's either federal or outside scholarship programs. Always be aware of them. And this is where I, again, repeat, you might think, well, it's just a lot of applications. It's a lot of things to apply for. It's really not. A lot of these scholarship foundations make the application process as simple as possible. So they typically will ask you for some similar information, so you might have that already ready to go. Look out at the National Medical Fellowships. Look out at the AMA. Look out at the AAMC, Tylenol, HRSA. There are so many scholarships out there that are available for you to apply. So just make sure you do set some time aside, because as I remember, most of you are 2 years out from medical school. So you've got time to do this. Put a day aside. Look up these scholarships. See what your options are. Apply everywhere you can. I will say this. Make sure when you're doing the application process, you are careful and safe with your information. Do not put your social security number on a scholarship application. There's no reason they should be asking you for that. I think all of you are smart enough to know whether or not it looks like a scam or not. But just make sure you spend some time either using some information like we're sharing here, revisiting this video later, or just double checking some websites. You can absolutely find some really, really great scholarship options for yourself. Do not miss out on monies when you could have just sent in a simple application. It's just really, really important to do that. And at the end of the day, also just make sure you utilize everything that the AAMC has to offer for you, right? Because when it comes to scholarships, sometimes even loans, you think about repayment options, even forgiveness provisions, because many of you are probably going to ask here in a little bit. We haven't looked at the Q&A yet, but I'm guaranteed public service loan forgiveness has come up somewhere. There's going to be all sorts of different things that you want to be aware of. Like, am I eligible for public service loan forgiveness? What is going on out there? What kind of programs are there that do forgiveness for me? And we have a database out there for you that you can absolutely take advantage of, where you can look and see what state it was in, the designation, what was forgiven, forgiveness, all these different things are out there for you. So take advantage of this, so that way it gives you also a little bit of peace of mind when you're doing the application process. And you may be thinking, okay, I know I'm going to also make sure to keep on top of any forgiveness, scholarships, repayments, and other programs, because we put that all together for you right there. So definitely take advantage of that. Julie, I'll let you dive in and talk a little bit more about some of these other scholarship programs for us.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jonathan. So Jonathan mentioned that there are some loans that some schools may participate in, and these are federal loans through the HRSA, the Health and Human Resources Services Division. They are those LDS and the PCL loans. Those are still federal loans through HRSA, Health Resources and Services Administration. But that same organization offers some scholarships. So we want to talk about some specific scholarships. Some of you may have heard of these. Some of them might be new to you. So we'll go into a little bit of detail about these. The National Health Service Scholarship Program provides scholarships to full-time students pursuing a career in primary health care. So this can be a great scholarship if that is what you are interested in. It actually covers up to 4 years of tuition and eligible fees, other eligible education expenses, and it provides a monthly stipend to cover your living expenses. Now, recipients of this scholarship, they do have to commit to a service commitment. That means that they have to be willing to provide a service commitment of at least 2 years by providing service in a health professional shortage area, or HPSA area, and that's after they've completed training. If you want to learn more about this scholarship program, I encourage you to review the HRSA website. You're going to find a lot of information here. It's really important that scholars understand that what their responsibilities are for accepting the scholarship, because you do have to make that commitment of service. If you don't, this is one of those scholarships that could turn into something that isn't free. It could turn into a loan that you have to pay back if you don't meet that service commitment. All right. HRSA also provides another scholarship, and some of you may not be aware of this. This scholarship may not be for all of you. This is the Native Hawaiian Health Scholarship Program. This one is for those who are pursuing careers in primary and behavioral health disciplines. And again, in return for providing healthcare services to Native Hawaiians and disadvantaged people who live in high need and rural communities in Hawaii. Now, this scholarship will pay for tuition, related school expenses, and it'll also provide the scholarship recipient with a monthly stipend. Now, the scholarship recipient must commit to serve 1 year in a medically underserved area within Hawaii immediately after graduation and licensure for every year of funding that they receive. There is a minimum service commitment of 2 years and a maximum commitment of 4 service years. This next opportunity is called the Indian Health Services. They also offer a scholarship program, and this is for qualifying American Indian and Alaska Native health profession students who are pursuing a career, and they, in return for getting this scholarship, they will also work in a medically underserved Indian health programs facility in the U.S. This IHS scholarship covers tuition, required fees, and some other educational expenses when you receive the first stipend. And if you go to their website, there is a ton of information out here about this scholarship, as well as all of the others. That's why we're putting these URLs up here for you, because there's more information than what I'm even giving you. The IHS scholarship also provides a monthly stipend of no less than $1,500 a month to help with living expenses. So it can be a really great program for those that qualify. This next scholarship that we wanted to talk about is called the VA Health Professional Scholarship Program, or HPSP. Now, this is, sometimes people aren't aware of this one. This scholarship pays for tuition and fees for students, and the recipient of the scholarship receives a monthly stipend as well while they're enrolled. In return for the scholarship, the scholar has to provide an 18-month service commitment for every year that they receive the scholarship, and the service commitment is fulfilled at a VA facility after they graduate and obtain licensure and complete their residency training. In addition to the VA scholarship program, the VA also offers a loan repayment assistance program. So if you do need to borrow student loans, that can help you pay back on any loans that you have. The National Health Service Corps also has programs that can help you pay back on your student loans too. So even though I'm going and talking about scholarships right now, some of these programs also have loan repayment assistance too. This next one, this is the Health Profession Scholarship Program. And this is through the military. They offer 2, 3, and 4-year military scholarships that can help cover your medical school expenses at any civilian medical school. They'll pay for your tuition, your fees. They'll reimburse you for required books, equipment, and supplies. They also provide a monthly living stipend as well as sign-on bonuses under certain conditions. The length of these scholarships can vary based upon the military branch that's offering them. And right now, the ones that are available are Army, Navy, and Air Force. Recipients will need to attend officer training, and they will need to participate in a 45-day annual training period for the scholarship that they receive. So again, another great opportunity there. Now, this is just a sampling of some of the scholarships that are out there. These will also show up in that database that Jonathan showed you. But we wanted to give you a little idea of what's out there and how much money they can actually help you save from borrowing. Now, the next thing we're going to move on to is something maybe for DACA students, students that are not eligible for federal aid. Well, the Immigrants Rising website has a list of scholarships and fellowships specifically for DACA students. So I would encourage DACA students to take a look at this information. Very, very helpful for you. There's also another resource that can help DACA students, and that is through the PH Dreamers, and their URL is on this next slide. They have information that can help undocumented students. We know that sometimes it's very difficult to figure out how you're going to pay if you're not a documented student and eligible for federal student aid. So go ahead and take a look at these resources. Now, I encourage you to take a look at everything that you can. Get those scholarships, apply for those scholarships, because every little bit will help. And I'm going to show you an example when we look at some numbers towards the end here. But I also want to bring it back to the fact that, as I said in the beginning, and I know I sound like a broken record, but over 70% of students do borrow student loans. You may not like to hear that, but that is the fact. We have that data. It's been the same for about 6 years now. $200,000 is the median amount of student loan debt that students take on for going to school. So what can you do if you don't get enough scholarship money to pay for all of your education and you do end up taking out some loans? Well, Jonathan brought it up earlier. There is a program that can also help pay back student loans, and that is the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. This is a program for anybody that borrows direct loans. So that would be those direct unsubsidized loans and direct plus loans as medical students. It can even take care of any undergraduate debt that you have through the direct loan program. You basically will have to work full-time for a qualifying full-time nonprofit employer. You will need to be making payments on your federal direct loans. You'll need to be enrolled in a qualifying repayment plan, which is basically what's called an income-driven repayment plan. Those are repayment plans that base your monthly payment on how much money you're earning. They don't look at how much debt you have. They look at what can you reasonably afford based upon the repayment plan. And then if you meet all of these requirements, after you make those 120 payments, any balance remaining from your federal student loan debt can be forgiven. So in as little as 10 years by working in a nonprofit for a nonprofit employer, you could receive loan forgiveness if you do borrow monies. There are other opportunities, as I mentioned, and some of those are going to be shown on this next slide. Like I said, National Health Service Corps offers not only the scholarship, but they have a loan program. So does Indian Health Service. Maybe you'll be interested in doing research with the NIH. They have loan repayment assistance programs. And there's also military programs as well for loan repayment assistance. So even if you don't go through the scholarship, they have programs to help with paying back some student loans as well. I would encourage you to look at the fact sheet that we have here. That's that aamc.org/repay-assist. There's information on there, not only about these scholarship programs, but loan repayment resources as well. And there's others as well. So we're going to transition a little bit now that we got your wheels thinking about scholarships and loans, and we're gonna move into a little bit about budgeting. And I have another poll for you because we want to know, what do you guys already know about budgeting? Do you budget? Do you currently have a written monthly budget? We are very interested in this because if you haven't figured it out, we're probably going to very much so encourage you to budget and start early. So I'm going to let Jonathan take it away, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about budgeting, and then I'll return after that with some information about repayment and how these scholarships can help that total indebtedness. It looks like we don't have a lot of budgeters right now, Jonathan.
Well, you know what? That's fine, because I do believe that a big part of this job I'm doing is called karma. And that is because I don't want to tell all of you when I started to do a budget. I'm a middle-aged man and I should have done it a long time ago. It makes a very big difference when it comes to budgeting, whether or not you're in medical school, whether you're an adult or not. So I'm going to go through some information here and help you out. Looks like I was in the majority as well, 66% or so, that don't really currently have a budget, right?
We have a lot of tears coming up here, Jonathan, and it's okay.
You
I
know
just
what,
want y'all to know it's going to be okay. You're going to
I
be able to
know,
do this.
like I said, I think this job is a little bit of karma. So I'm just going to go ahead and accept that. So let's just talk about budgeting, and let's talk about how important budgeting actually is for you as someone who is really looking to go into medical school, right? So what is a budget? Budget is a financial planning tool based on income and expenses. And I want to make sure that I reiterate before I even move further that having a budget isn't just for those of you who think you're going to take out loans. This is going to be for all of you. If all of you are going to medical school based on a savings plan that you might have with your family, if all of you are going to medical school because you are getting some assistance from family, if you're in medical school even on a full scholarship, you don't want to run out of money, right? And you're not going to know what you're doing with your monies until you actually set up a budget. So this section, a lot of times people get confused and think this is for you with loans. It is not. This is for all of you. So we definitely want to make sure that we go through what you can do to actually have a budget in place. So here's the main reason we do it, right? We want to make sure that a budget makes sure that your spending is aligned to your financial goals. These are things you can control with spending and helps you live within your means. You can have financial goals as a medical school student. You absolutely can, whether they're short-term, middle-term, long-term goals, you absolutely can do that. One of your short-term goals as a medical school student, minimize the amount of debt that you have, maybe leave medical school without credit card debt. Two things that you could do very easily if you just look at a budget and focus on your spending during that time. So what are some ways that you can actually get started with your budget? Well, first of all, put it in writing. However you want to do that. I use an Excel sheet. Again, I'm giving my age here, but I'm very old school. I like to use an Excel sheet. So I put it in writing. It's there for me. I know where it is and I know where my numbers are. Some of you might feel you'd rather use budgeting apps. Tons of budgeting apps out there available for you. Make sure if you're going to look at those, that they are ones that you're comfortable with, that they're showing you the numbers that you need, but make sure you do put something in writing somewhere. Review it periodically. I'm someone who does it every Monday, for example, right? I want to look back and see where I blew money that I didn't need to over the last weekend. So maybe that's why I do it on Monday. You as a medical school student, maybe you think I'll do it at the end of every month. You're going to be busy. You're going to be a medical school student. You're going to be very, very busy. So you still want to prioritize this and make sure that you're reviewing it on a regular basis, whenever that is, weekly, monthly, semester, whatever. Just make sure you're reviewing your numbers and make necessary adjustments. Look and see where you're spending a little bit more than you really should. Look and see where you're saving some money, which is great. Know where your strengths and your weaknesses are as far as your expenses are concerned. That's going to be really, really important when you start your budget. Think about budgeting basics, right? It's whatever your income is minus whatever your expenses are. And then what's left over is your discretionary income. Everybody's total income is going to be different. Not everybody has the same income. Some people, their income is actually their financial aid refund. Again, great, but that could also mean you're somebody on a full scholarship, right? You could get a full cost scholarship. You don't want to run out of that money, even though it was a scholarship. That means you're out of money. It's not likely the school's going to say, okay, we'll just give you some more money because you ran out. But again, if you're on a loan, make sure you're looking at that and thinking, this is what I have to live on. So whatever you have to live on, minus your expenses, then you have discretionary income at the end of the month. That is the number that you want to do your very best to make sure it stays positive in the green. You don't want that to go negative and in the red. That's where your focus needs to be when thinking about budgeting basics, keeping what you got coming in as income, being more than what you have going out as expenses. So let's talk about expenses for a little bit. There are different kinds of expenses that you want to be aware of when you're putting together a budget. Fixed expenses are those that never change. You could put those in your budgeting worksheet right now. So let's say you're me and you're using an Excel sheet. Well, for your first full semester of medical school, you can probably put in your full semester housing charges. If you have a car, it should be the same car payment for those first 4 to 5 months. Health insurance premiums, those don't really fluctuate either. And if you're somebody who's still paying a regular cell phone bill, that's going to stay the same. So think about the expenses you have that never change. Those are fixed. Those you know what they are. So you can go ahead and calculate that. It's these variable expenses that we want to start to think about the most, because these are amounts that are going to change not only from month to month, but these could change from day to day. right? Because you got to eat every day. You want to make sure that you think about what your expenses are. So things like groceries, dining out, clothing, entertainment. Definitely make sure you look at what you're spending on these things every single time you get a chance to do so, because they're going to change every single time, given the time of the year, and given just what's going on with you. And you also want to think about if you're living on a loan. This is where we do sort of bring that up here, is that if you're living on a loan, remember the unsub and the plus, they're accruing interest. And even if you get a loan that's subsidized and not accruing interest, you do have to pay it back. So if you could trim down a little bit on the dining out, for example, and again, guilty, I'm using that as an example for a reason. If you can trim down on dining out, you could save yourself a ton of money. We're not telling you to live on ramen noodles. We're just saying, look at your numbers, see where your expenses are, and make sure you're staying within a variance that's comfortable for you, so that you're not going to run out of money at any time to your medical school. Your expenses shouldn't, and your monies should not be your biggest concern in medical school. It's your curriculum and your studies and your research. So make sure you focus on these things. One of the best ways to do this is looking at the cost of attendance of your school. I cannot stress this enough. Your financial aid team spends a lot of time every single year putting together an estimated cost of attendance. Tuition and fees and rent, if you live on campus especially, those are going to be more fixed. They're probably not going to really change that much for you, but other things will: food, miscellaneous, transportation. But these numbers are put together by your school because they've done research every year saying that, based on our research and information, student surveys, many things, they say this is an estimated cost to go to this school. So whatever school this might have been, let's say, for example, this is what's going to cost to attend that school. Use these numbers when you put your budget together and say to yourself, these are numbers I cannot exceed. Because if I'm taking out all these loans, or if I got a full scholarship, or if I know I'm using a savings account, think about what you could pull out of that savings account every month to make sure you stay within these numbers. That's going to be important. And these numbers are very, very good for you to use. And that's where I brought up, again, looking at these things: rent, food, miscellaneous, transportation. Think about these numbers that are things on you, right? Tuition and fees are going to be direct costs. You're going to see those on your bill in school. They're not going to change. Loan fees are going to vary based on what you borrow. So just know what these different numbers are and whether or not they're going to change or not. Think about what you can control, again, when we think about all of these different things that are going to be variable expenses. But always remember this as well: your financial aid office can only award you monies for up to the amount of time that you're actually in school. So you might have a 10-month budget. Like your first year, you might start in August and you may actually be done in May. So that's about a 10-month budget where you can get monies to go to medical school. But then you're going to have your summer months that weren't budgeted into that financial aid award. So again, if you're living off of loans, all the way up to the cost of attendance, or if you got that full ride scholarship, whatever it is, always be aware of the months that you're being awarded. When you look at your financial aid webpage and you go to the cost of attendance section, I guarantee you it's going to tell you how many months each of those years are, whether it's your first year, second year, third year, or fourth year, because they're all going to vary. Your third year is usually your longer year, right? Because it's almost a full 12 months. So just think about that and be aware of what those numbers are when you're looking, again, at that cost of attendance. You can also use a lot of different, now this is just one example of what we have at the AAMC you can use as a resource. But when you think about putting things in writing, it's also pretty easy to forget about things, right? So this is a good example of what you can use. Use this as an idea of getting your numbers together, right? Start to look at these different things that we have listed here: personal care, subscriptions, laundry, dry cleaning. A lot of people don't think about that as being an expense every month. It's going to vary, right? But obviously it can. So just think about these things. Using a tool like this budget worksheet that we have at the AAMC is a good way to look back and think, oh, maybe I forgot about parking. You want to make sure that you put down everything that you can, because that way you're going to have a complete budget in place. And then as things sort of come up, if there's a new expense that comes up, put it on there. But again, this goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning. Put something in writing, review it periodically. And if you need to make changes so that you don't run out of monies, make those changes. That's what's going to be really, really important about this budgeting for you. keeping it on track. All of these things that we just talked about, the main reason we do that is so that you can keep it on track. Like I said, when you get started, you want to check it on a weekly basis if you can, maybe even daily. I mean, if you do happen to go to a sporting event, that's fine. We're not telling you not to do that. If you happen to go out to a dining with some friends, or you happen to go to see a concert or something like that, that's perfectly fine to do. But just be aware your entertainment budget for that month should be done, right? So just kind of think about that moving forward and compare it every month. One of the things I do on my Excel sheet is I'll put something red if it goes a little over, or something green if I saved a little bit of money, so that I can kind of see why. A good rule of thumb is thinking about December, for example. Some of you might want to travel back home. Your travel expenses might be a little bit more over the holidays. Be aware of that. Maybe you could start saving on your transportation in September and October and November, so that way you don't exceed that full budget. And if you're having any kind of trouble with this, you can meet with your financial aid team. We're hoping, and we almost guarantee, they're going to refer you to some of our resources at the AAMC to help you out with some of these budgeting, because it's going to be really, really important that you keep it on track. Starting, it's great, but that's only one part of it. You've got to make sure you keep it going. So please make sure you take advantage of all the tools you have available for you for budgeting. Now, that being said, Julie, I'm going to turn it over to you for our loan repayment options for any of these students that happen to take out student loans.
All right, so we're going to bring it back to loan repayment and what it would look like if you borrow, but maybe you can even borrow a little bit less because you get some scholarships. So first, I want to give you a very, very high level overview of what repayment could potentially look like. Then we'll move into an example. And then I want to save a few minutes for some questions and let you know when you can reach us tomorrow when you come to the booth as well. So let's move on and take a look. I want you all to know that if you do borrow federal student loans, you do not have to make payments while you're in residency if you don't want to. You can postpone through what's called a mandatory residency forbearance. Many people will choose to make a payment because they'll choose to use an income-driven repayment plan, which is what you'll see here on the next slide. You have options between traditional repayment plans, which can give you anywhere from 10 to 25 years to repay your student loans with a set monthly payment. Or you could be looking at income-driven repayment plans, which are in the green section. These are all going to be based upon your income, not your debt. If we go to the next slide, you'll see that these that are highlighted and in the previous, these are the options for 2024 graduates, at least before July 1st, 2024. And then as of July 1st, 2024, pay as you earn is actually going to sunset. So the reason I have these highlighted is because I'm going to talk about these when we look at these numbers. So I'm going to show you an example using a forbearance and then moving into a traditional repayment plan called standard. And I'm also going to show you an example of if you go into an income-driven repayment plan. So just so you know, the parameters for this example are a 2024 graduate who's going into family medicine. We're going to look at it borrowing $200,000 versus getting $40,000 in scholarship for the 4 years that they're in school and saving $40,000, so only borrowing $160,000. In our example, they're going to earn $62,700 as their stipend for their first year of residency. And then after residency, we're using the average salary based upon the AMN healthcare publication, which reported as of 2023 that the average salary for a family physician is $255,000. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this means. If you borrowed $200,000 and you chose not to make any payments while you're in residency, or even if you borrowed $160,000 and didn't make any payments during residency, you would not be required to make a payment if you did a mandatory residency forbearance. After residency, if you move into the standard plan, standard is a 10-year repayment plan. So you'd be paying that same amount for 10 years until the loan is paid in full. Now, you can always pay more if you choose to, but you're not required to. So this example is showing if I did pay just the minimum amount, how much would I pay if I borrowed $200,000 versus how much would I pay if I borrowed $160,000? And you can see here by saving $40,000 through getting a scholarship, I'm not saving myself in years in this example, but I'm saving myself money, right? Because not only did I save that $40,000 just because I got $40,000 in scholarship, but when you look at the total amount repaid because of the interest as well, I'm paying back less by borrowing less. And so overall, the total costs are less. So that's to show you what even $40,000, $10,000 a year can do for you. Okay. Now let's look at it if you are going to go into the SAVE plan. SAVE is a new repayment plan. It's a great repayment plan, and it really helps people eliminate some accrued interest on their loans. I would encourage you to take a look at our resources if you want to learn more about this new repayment plan, but just to show you some numbers, again, if you borrow 200 versus 160, your monthly payment while you're in the SAVE plan during residency is going to be the same. It's going to be 240 to 270. After residency, though, if you borrowed $40,000 less, that means your monthly payment is eventually going to be a little bit less than what you would have borrowed if you had 200,000. And what really shows up here is that if you are in the exact same repayment plan and you borrowed $40,000 less, you took off 3 years of paying on your student loans and you saved about 80,000. So not only 40,000 from getting that scholarship, but another 40,000 from just being in that SAVE plan. And not to mention the time value of money here. You save 3 years and this is if you just make the minimum monthly payments. Again, you could always pay more if you choose to. And remember, this is when your salary is going to be $255, where you're making that $2,000 a month payment. So it is realistic to look at that, especially if you use budgeting techniques. So we're going to go and take a look at all of this together now. And what I really wanted to show you was that last column. Yes, you might have to borrow 200, but what if you can get that scholarship? You're going to save yourself money, not only through the scholarship, but through repayment as well. And so I encourage you to take a look at these resources. I encourage you to remember these tips as you're thinking about how you're going to finance your medical education. And so let's end with these final tips, which are, know what costs are associated. So let's look at this next slide. Know the costs associated with your schooling, apply for those scholarships, and take a look at the resources that are available. Be aware of those deadlines. Talk to the financial aid staff, because sometimes they know of specific scholarships for that school, or maybe they hear of something that was just announced where it wasn't announced previously. So pay attention to that. Keep your spending plan, keep that budget and stick to it, and plan for the future. Think about some of these options that might be available to you when you do go to repay your student loans. Now, we know that this was not an all-inclusive presentation about financing your medical school. So what we wanted to do was to draw your attention to this next slide and let you know when you can come and talk to Jonathan and me tomorrow. We are going to be available in the AAMC booth tomorrow from 11 to 12 and from 4 to 7 p.m. So if you have questions that we don't get to, because there's no way we're going to get to all of the questions that were asked here, come talk with us tomorrow. We'll chat with you online and we'll be happy to answer your questions. And we're going to take it one step further. First, we're going to do a real quick poll, and we're going to ask you, did you learn anything today? We're hoping that you did. We're hoping you learned about a few things that you might have not have known about before, but we're also going to give you our contact information. So Jonathan, can you give them that next slide, which has our first email address on it? And that is us, first@aamc.org. If you have questions, you're more than welcome to contact us. We'd be happy to answer your questions via email. And again, tomorrow at the booth. And I'm glad to see that some of you did learn a little bit of information today. So thank you again for participating and for answering our polls. Now I'm going to quickly go over to the Q&A, and we're going to answer some of these. So Jonathan, if you want to answer a few, then I'll answer a few. How about this? How about, let's see.
I can start with the top and give you a few if you want me to.
That sounds good.
Yeah, so we did discuss primary care scholarships. Is there anything else you can think about just to throw to the group about those?
Yeah, actually, National Health Service Corps also has what's called a scholarships to scholarships to student program, S2S. I would also go and take a look at that one as well. It's for fourth year students. So a lot of the things to keep in mind for that.
Great. One of these is just saying, how early can we start applying for scholarships? So I'll just go ahead and tell them, because I dove into that a little bit. Keep an eye on the individual scholarship, right? So if you're looking at outside scholarships, federal scholarships, anything that we showed you, look and see when the application process starts, because when that starts, that's when you can apply. And then also when it comes to institutional scholarships with your school, look and see when their application process opens. That is also where I go into the earlier, like I mentioned, how the process can change every year. The FAFSA is a little delayed this year. So if that happens, your school should notify you on that website. So just whenever that scholarship tells you, and they always let you know when the application process is, that's one of the first things they always show you. Whenever that is, that's when you want to submit it. That's what I would really focus on. Julie, did you want to add anything else to that real quickly?
Actually, I'm going to end this here because we're at time. And so I wanted to let you all know that I put our link to our database, aamc.org/ST loan. So that answers a lot of the questions that were in the box that says, what's the URL where I can go and look for some scholarships? That is one place to start. So start with the FIRST program. And again, if you do not know about the FIRST program, you can go to aamc.org/first. I'm sorry that we don't have time to go over all the questions, but again, join us tomorrow. Take a look at the videos that are out there. And thank you so much for joining us today. We hope this was helpful for you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you tomorrow.